You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Fonte with a scooping header
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Blue mouse shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And it's been a busy week, from the loss to Bournemouth to the midweek win over Portsmouth to the trip to London, to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time officially for the first team. There's been a lot going on at Saints. There's a lot to talk about. And joining me this week to do all of that is Luke Millard. And Luke is a patron of the show. He is a constant away fan, someone that I've been in communication with now for some time. And it was a pleasure to be able to just chat with him, to catch up with him, to get to know him a little bit better, and talk about everything that's going on. Well, obviously, we won't spend too much time on the Bournemouth match. We've had an episode since then. But Portsmouth and Tottenham, those were two matches that Luke was at. So we get his kind of experience. You go from one of the oldest stadiums that we will play at all season to one of the newest. And it was just great to be able to catch up with him a little bit. But there's a lot to discuss, from selection dilemmas to performances to getting drawn against City after you beat Portsmouth, all kinds of stuff like that. But we'll march through that. Hopefully we'll provide some perspective on how the team is going, on some things that we are worried about. And yeah, hopefully it all kind of makes a little bit more sense by the end of it. And I will say that although Saints did play against 10 men for much of the time, they were unable to take any points away from Tottenham, obviously. So that's a bit disappointing. We made a bit of a mess of it, maybe, unable to break a very organized Spurs team down. But I also made a bit of a mess of the questions that some of you sent in. So hopefully they make sense. But if not, that's on me. I apologize. But anyway, special thanks to Luke once again for coming on the show, and a special thanks to all of the rest of the patrons over at patreon.com/SFC Delivery. Last week, all the patrons got one extra podcast episode, and all the $5 patrons got two extra podcast episodes around the Portsmouth match. So thank you for that. And thank you to Dan James for coming on the show and helping me out with that second $5 a month Patreon podcast episode, looking back and recapping Portsmouth in detail from the train onward. You'll get a little bit of that with Luke. We'll talk about it a little bit, but obviously we have more to talk about than just the train ride. So anyway, here's my conversation with Luke Millard. If you want to get in touch with Luke, you can do that. He's on Instagram at Millard505. And a special thanks to him again. And here's our conversation. I hope you enjoy it. I'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Luke Millard. He is on Instagram at Millard505. Luke, you're a patron of the show, a longtime Saints supporter, and we spent the last hour kind of getting to know one another and just kind of hanging out. So how are you?
I'm great. Yeah. Great to be talking to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show and just, kind of sitting and chatting with me, and an interesting week, I guess. And if you just look at the results and you didn't know anything about Saints, you say, oh, they lost twice in the span of the last, week or so, and they had one victory. But I guess it's not that great of a week. But I think considering maybe the team we beat midweek, maybe it's all okay.
Yeah. Someone that sits next to me at St Mary's actually asked me before the Bournemouth game, would you rather take a win against Pompey or a win against Bournemouth? And I think every Saints fan answers with the Portsmouth victory. It'd be nice to have got something against Tottenham, but that victory will stick in the mind of everyone for a long time.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I mean that midweek match, we've talked about it a little bit. It was a bit of a pain to be able to see for me, but it nothing. I don't think anything beats that. It was emphatic. Other than the first 20 minutes, I would say. And I thought we did a lot of good things during that game. Maybe not all of them carried over to yesterday, but I think there are other things going on. We'll talk about all of it, but I don't. We don't need to taint the Portsmouth win with what happened yesterday. I think we'll keep them separate, just at least in my mind. That way, we can enjoy them for what it was. But before we do that, you've been a Saints fan for some time, but like, how did you get started with supporting Saints?
So it's kind of a friend of a friend thing. So I grew up in a place where there weren't many local football teams. We had one local non-league team that I tried to see as best I could. But the local league team to me, I suppose, was Swindon, a fairly small league team. But I never felt a connection to them. They were quite far away. And a friend of a friend took me to see Southampton. So went back to see my first game when we were in League One for the first season. Went to a handful of matches, and as soon as I started going, I knew next season I'd get a season ticket. So it's been 10 great years as a season ticket holder. Lots of great memories along the way. I was blessed really with my first 2 seasons as jumping on the pitch at the full time of both of the last games of the season for back-to-back promotions. Great managers, great players, trips to Europe, trips to cup finals. So yeah, I've had a couple of years now of a bit of hardship, but as a Premier League team, you still take the big teams coming down and go into lovely new stadiums and what have you. So yeah, it's been a great 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if that doesn't seal it, those first couple of seasons, jumping on the pitch at full time, celebrating promotion and everything else, like if that doesn't do it, then I don't know what you're in it for, so that's nice that you were able to experience that. Wish you could have been able to experience it at the end of the EFL Cup final, but we'll get to that. Did you grow up kind of watching a lot of sport at home or anything like that, or was it kind of the friend of a friend thing that was your first introduction to football? Yeah,
so I've always loved sport. I play a lot of tennis and football. But growing up with an older brother who was about 8 years older than me, I kind of fell into the tactic of doing what your older brother does because he's cool. Sure. And I hate to say he was a Man United fan, which is devastating, I know. So I followed his footsteps for a number of years, being a younger brother of quite a young age. And when I realised I could rebel, it was 2005. I was 8, and Man U were playing Arsenal in the FA Cup final. So I decided that's the time I could change my allegiance, and I changed to Arsenal because I wanted to rid my brother's allegiances from myself. So I did follow Arsenal for a long time. I've got a couple of strange retro away shirts. I like away shirts because they're always a lot different to the home shirts. And I remember going to the stadium tour at Arsenal and getting a shirt with the name on the back of the next player who was meant to be the next best thing, who was Maro Shamak.
Oh yeah.
Let's let the tumbleweed go through. I didn't do well. Went to Palace, didn't do well there, and who knows where he is now. So but I was glad I was taken to Saints in the end. Supporting your team who are local to you and who you're able to go and see and support is a thing I truly believe in. Growing up with lots of Liverpool, Man United fans around, Southampton was the nearest team to me, and that link in was maybe inevitable. It would have happened without the friend of a friend, but So I've always been a big fan of football.
Yeah, my son is an Arsenal fan, and we were supposed to be able to see Southampton play Arsenal when we were over there previously. And because I was really rooting for Arsenal to get knocked out of the Europa League, so the games would stay on a Saturday, but they were in the Europa League. They got moved to a Sunday. We flew out on Sunday. We couldn't make the match. So I felt I felt bad for him. I really want to see Southampton, obviously, but I felt bad for him. He didn't get to go to the Emirates, but we did. Apparently they're awake. I don't know if you can hear them. The kids are waking up, but can you hear that?
Not at the moment. No, they're doing well. Not too loud at the moment.
Somebody's blowing their nose, and it's.
No, yeah, I got that.
Poppy, I'm recording, babe. Okay, love you. So I mean, I felt kind of bad for him to not be able to go, but made it up for him. Took him to Bayern Munich Arsenal earlier this summer, or previously during the summer. So I think he enjoyed that. So anyway, it's okay. We all have our Arsenal supporting and Man United supporting friends, and that's fine. I mean, so throughout that time, obviously you have the kind of end of season kind of jumping on the pitch stuff. You have, several kind of big matches in there, at least the things that stick out to me. But like, what are some of the, you don't have to share them all, but like, do you have a couple of fond memories that kind of stick out in terms of your time over supporting Saints both home and away?
Yeah, so I said I've had the season ticket for 10 years, but I try and go to around about 8 away games a season. And it worked out well. I started to go to the majority of them when we got into Europe. And I'd never been abroad before, so when we got drawn in the Europa League, it was quite a big thing. Who are we going to get? Where might we go? So the one we picked, which most people picked, was Milan, the San Siro. It was for the football in terms, wasn't the greatest of spectacles, but to go abroad for the first time and to see the team play in the Europa League group stages, I don't know if the next time it will happen. Hopefully not too far away. But that's definitely one of the big things that sticks in the memory. Next to that, I'd have to say, as I said before, growing up with lots of Liverpool fans around me, going to Anfield and being in that away end for the semi-final win is definitely maybe just beats it, purely for Liverpool, such a hard team to play, and having so many Liverpool fans around you, it always helps if you've got someone to have bragging rights over. So went mad when that Sims to Long moment happened, and I'm sure people look back at it with goosebumps. I certainly do.
Yeah, that's I mean, I remember where I was for that match. And yeah, I remember when that goal went in, it was just like, you could feel it coming. And then Højbjerg is screaming for the ball on the left. And sometimes you go like, don't pass it to Long, but then you do. And then he does it. And that was, yeah. So yeah, I get it. And yes, there are a lot of Liverpool fans, and it's really nice to be able to hang that over them, at least for a period of time. Because if they get too cocky, you just go, well, how about that? How about that final? But now that they've won the Champions League, maybe we can't say too much, but we still have that day. So, I mean, anything else, or is that kind of, are those kind of the places that do it for you?
So for me, I think the Swansea away game, I was lucky to go to that one as well. It actually fell on the night before my birthday, that game. So I went hoping it would be a nice early birthday present from the Saints, and because it was Swansea in an evening match, midweek, I ended up being in the car on the way back from the match and having my birthday on the way back. And I love Gabbiadini. I felt so sorry for him for what happened in the cup final. Everyone feels sorry for those goals not being counted. So for him to get that goal and sort of put his name in history for us, I mean, whether we would have set up or not, it was such a close call, and that game did it for us. So yeah, so I love going to away games. It's my chance to go and see parts of the UK I hadn't been to before and see new stadiums. And I always think the atmosphere is always better in the away end. So, and the atmosphere was certainly rocking that night after that Gabbiadini goal. Sure.
And that's something we're going to have to come to, because there's been some controversy in the media, at least from Pompey fans about the support or lack of it from Saints. And we'll talk about all of that, because I think we have some bones to pick there with them and what's been said. And yeah, I don't know. And I just wanted to take a second to thank you you're one of the patrons of the show, and I truly appreciate that. I think it's anytime I get that email that says you have a new patron, it's like, well, what mistakes have they made? Like what does their life look like that they're willing to do this? So I appreciate it a lot, and it's been great to get to know you both in there and get your perspective on, when you go to matches and things like that, and just to be able to interact with you like this. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's great. I mean, you don't always see the larger community of Southampton. You go every week and you see the people at St Mary's supporting the club, and I often get annoyed at them leaving their seats in the 85th minute just to beat traffic, especially if it's such a great game. And so there are people out there that are watching the whole match from all around the world and committing themselves to Saints and supporting them. It's good to see that it's a real global thing.
I have been caught both watching on my cell phone as I am at a stoplight, and having my headphone in, and then like a hoodie on at my daughter's games, listening to Blackmore call the game as I'm also yelling at the players to get their defensive shape back in order. So I've gotten in trouble plenty of times trying to stay in touch with Saints. So it's all right. So. I mean, you've had quite a busy week in terms of what's happened, and we covered the Portsmouth match a little bit on the Patreon episode, but for everybody else, I mean, you were there that night, and I want to start kind of with the idea, because I don't think you'd probably not been to Portsmouth or Fratton Park. I would assume it's not a frequent place you visit. prior to this, but had you been there before?
Oh, yeah, funnily enough, I actually had been. So a friend of mine supports Gillingham, League One side. He's moved to my local area, and when we can, we go to the away games of the teams that they play in and around the South England. So we've been to a couple of grounds, Oxford, Swindon, and they actually played Portsmouth in the Checker Trade Cup last season. It was a really weird game. There was only 2,000 fans there. They do normally, to their credit, although I don't like saying anything in that sense, sell out their games. But they're boycotting the Checker Trade Cup. So there was only 2,000 of their fans there, 40 Gillingham fans, which I must admit was a bit disappointing. But it was kind of nice to go in a sense of seeing Fratton Park in its entirety, because we didn't see much of it from the outside, at least on Tuesday night, because of the way it was all worked out. So yeah, I think it was either last season or season before I got to go and have a little look at Fratton Park.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, I'm sure it was a lot different in terms of showing up for Gillingham versus showing up on Tuesday. So the travel down, I mean, I kind of just want to walk through the whole experience a little bit, because from the outside, what I know about Portsmouth and kind of the rumors that go around about and the stories that go around about kind of the history between the two clubs and everything else, like it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is a huge rivalry and that there is some bad blood between the teams and the fans and everything else. But were you at all kind of looking at it with any sort of trepidation, or were you kind of just like, no, this is going to be it's any other away day, or was it somewhere in between?
So you definitely look at it. If you obviously we've not played for 7 years, it's one of those times where it's going to be a crazy game, and you're sort of having the back of your mind about potential sort of things that could go wrong on your day. But knowing how they policed it last time, although they weren't going to do the bubble bus system this time, you knew there'd be enough police there to make sure that everyone was able to enjoy a good game of football. But yeah, it was that sense of not nervousness. There was a little bit there, not knowing what was going to happen on the night and what materialised. I must admit, the police did a pretty good job, and I'm pleased to say I don't think many people got hurt. I know the horse that was hit by the Portsmouth fan was all okay. It was announced on Facebook, if you saw that video.
Yeah.
So I think, the police did a good job, but I was a bit nervous before going into it, I must admit.
And for you to get there, because, I mean, I think they didn't force everybody to come, kind of bubble bus style, but I know there's a direct train from Southampton Central into Fratton, I think. And was that how you arrived, or were you on that football specific train, or did you come by some other means?
Yeah, so I initially was going to get a train from where I live in Winchester down to Fratton, a separate train. But a friend of mine persuaded me that if we were on a train with all the Southampton fans, it would be a bit more of an experience just being with Southampton fans on that sort of fan-only train. So we went down to Southampton, and we went to get on the train, and I mean, it started from walking towards the station. The train was still, I think, 20 minutes until it was going to arrive. And you could hear the fans on the platform as we were approaching, just singing and having a great time. So, we got that football special train, but I think anyone else who was on it will know what happened. There was a big 8-coach train. I'd like to guess at maybe 500-600 fans, maybe as a push, but it was a very full train. I had to stand. I couldn't get a seat. Planned to get to Fratton Park just under an hour before kickoff, and then ended up getting there just after kickoff. So it didn't exactly go to plan. No.
And were you able to? Did you get in the ground before the first goal, or were you one of the fans who got stuck outside?
Yeah. So luckily, we got on near the front of the train. So everyone who was at the front of the train pretty much got in. I want to say 15 minutes in or so. Although there isn't a big screen in Fratton Park, so we weren't entirely sure exactly what the time was. Obviously, poor facilities there. But no, so the big wait on the train itself, there were signalling problems. A couple of people commented the police tried to keep us back because they wanted to get everyone in the ground first. But I must admit, I did look on the train website that night, and there were a number of trains late into Pompey. I know there was a train from London, from the completely wrong direction. It was an hour late getting into Portsmouth that night. So there were big signalling problems, apparently. This is the reason we didn't get in on time. And I think, for me, the experience really started getting off of that train and then getting up onto the streets of Portsmouth and being herded towards the stadium. It did feel very spectacular. having hundreds of police officers with riot bands out, riot gear on, horses. I mean, you name it, was probably there. But you do understand why it's happened because of what people have done in the past.
Sure. And did you see or witness any of those things? I heard potential there were a few scuffles, but for the most part that the fans were kept apart and other than them abusing our players verbally, it was all pretty just normal stuff.
Yeah, so I think because of the time we got down there, everyone was already in the stadium, so it was perfect for the police in the sense that it was likely there'll be no scuffles for us because everyone was in the stadium. And to be honest, even after the game, the way that they handled it, they surrounded us with, it was hundreds of police officers all in riot gear, and they drove vans back to back, bumper to bumper, in such a way that you couldn't get between the vans and you were being herded along in this group, and all of the streets were blocked off. No one could get in towards the away fans. The away fans couldn't leave the group they were in, so there was really no way that any fans were going to interact. And then even within the stadium, we had our own stand behind the goal, so we weren't even very close to the portal home supporters. So, yeah, in that sense, there was no scuffles that I saw. But potentially earlier on in the day with the earlier train with a smaller group of people, there may have been.
Sure. I was just glad everybody got in and out, I think, relatively safely. Other than the guy who punched the horse, I think he probably suffered maybe the worst. The police did not seem to hold back. I guess you could say they left it in on him a little bit. But you punch a horse, you probably deserve it. I mean, big moments of the match. We don't need to necessarily, and I'll be honest, I'm 100% avoiding talking about Spurs. But big moments in that match. I would say early on, you missed the part where they were kind of on top a little bit. But as Ings scores the first one, I think from that point on, we really turned and I think the biggest thing for me is I expected Portsmouth just to kick us up and down, and I was really happy when I was watching especially guys like Ward-Prowse and Ings who have some history and have some knowledge of what it means versus some of the other guys. I mean, Maya, she's been around for a while. He definitely put himself about a bit, especially later on, but like I was really happy to see Ings track back and slide tackle whoever it was. Even though the ball was out of play, I appreciated that. I appreciated Ward-Prowse using his body to push people off the ball. I was really glad that we were like, no, we're going to impose ourselves on this match, and this is how it's going down. And their players seem to like shy away from the occasion a little bit. So for me, that was like the biggest and kind of the most exciting thing, I would say. But for you, I mean, maybe goals aside, what else stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of surprised how well Pompey did in the game in terms of the chances they got. Obviously, I didn't see the first onslaught, but I did think at the time our backs were to the wall in a sense. There was a couple of goal line clearances here and there. And yeah, I mean, it's pleasing to say that we were clinical and we did create a number of chances, but I wouldn't say I don't want to use the word 4-0 flattered us, because I think the quality of us shone through. And I think it did all over the park, really. Sort of the fullbacks were great at getting forward, but defending, it was nice to see Bertie back in the side on the left. It's a bit of an contentious issue between fans at the moment. So the left-sided, left-footed left back was great, and yeah, I agree with you. Having those players that had a connection, Ings, coming from Winchester, coming up through Southampton, Prowse used to be a scapegoat, he's all right now. It's great to see the players that, as I said, are more familiar with the side and with the fixture, and were probably better placed for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, I was pretty impressed with it, and there were going to be portions of the game where they were going to have shots, and I'm just glad that we got 4-0 and not 4-1. As I spoke with Dan James for the Patreon episode, and he was very happy with to point that out. That we made sure not to. Just not to concede, and I think that was fine. So overall, pretty happy with I think getting out of there and everything else. And you said made it back relatively safely. The rain was coming down pretty good, I heard, and then unfortunately though the next night we wind up with the draw, and now we have City away. So that's a very fun Carabao Cup run we've been on, and I won't say we don't have a chance because that's not true, but that's almost a death blow there. And on the Patreon episode, even Dan James said, I'll take anybody but City. And then, of course, we get City. So I guess that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I was listening back to that episode just after the draw came out, the Patreon extra episode, and it was funny to hear that Dan's first team he didn't want was City. And I think, to be honest, if you ask anyone, that'd probably be the case. You always look for the lower league sides. You see Colchester knock Spurs out. I think Crawley knocked Stoke out, and kind of hope for those to keep your run going as best you can. I think the big disappointment for us is the fact that we play them again in 4 days after this fixture's scheduled. So I feel more sorry for the fans that do every away game. And now we're probably not going to have as many people there as we would have if we weren't in Manchester at the Etihad twice within 4 or 5 days. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, if there's a cup run and they've got Champions League here and there, there's always a chance. But sure. I think people always comment City's squads is just so good. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we do falter at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, people could just take a 4 or 5 day vacation. Right, to Manchester, that's fine.
I mean, yeah,
probably not the time of year or anything else that you want to spend 4 or 5 days in Manchester, but
yeah, this is it. I mean, I'm sure it's a lovely area, and I'd rather go to the other sites in the north. I think you've got some other nice places up there to see, but I'd be very surprised if many people do both. So I think people will go to one or the other. I'm debating now which one to go to. I'll probably be the Saturday game, hoping that wrestling players gives us a chance, maybe in the league where we need to pick up some points after the last couple of fixtures.
Yeah, I guess it's as good a transition as we will have. Obviously, last week the loss to Bournemouth, and then coming off the midweek victory over Portsmouth. I think people were relatively optimistic and feeling pretty good about the fact that we had scored some goals and everything else. You knew there were going to be at least a couple of changes. You knew Gunn was probably going to come back in. The initial team sheet, I think, would have pleased almost everybody. And I don't know how you felt about it when you saw it, but the original team sheet had Gunn, Cedric, Bednarak, Yoshida, Bertrand, Romeu, Højbjerg, Ward-Prowse, Buffal, Redmond, Ings. So that's 4-3-3 basically, not unlike what we played at Portsmouth that looked to work pretty well for some of the players that were there. You have creativity, you have pace, you have kind of intelligence, you have some steel in the middle, you have a back line that I think a lot of us are happy with. And then it changed because we don't know. Ralph Hasenhüttl says, according to the Southern Daily Echo, that he doesn't know. Cedric came up and said, I can't play. And then there was the decision to kind of to go from playing basically a 4-3-3 to something else. And Ralph puts it down to what Spurs did. In kind of this, they thought they were going to play a different shape, and when he saw what Spurs were doing, having the opportunity to make that change because Cedric pulled out, to be able to push the fullbacks forward and put them under pressure. I mean, but what did you make of that lineup once Vestergaard basically came in for Cedric and not Valerie?
So I agree with you in the sense of that first lineup. Just to dodge your question slightly, and it was gonna please everyone. Everyone knows that I think Hasenhüttl wants to play with 4-3-3, and to see Cedric and Bednarak and then 3 centre mids and 3 attacking players going forward. Everyone was so glad to see that, and I must admit I didn't understand really at the time Vestergaard coming in for Cedric when you had got Valerie on and you see how he wanted to set up. I think that sometimes it's good to set your own team up without reference to the other team and playing how you want to play going forward. But I do understand him looking at that side, and you've got people like Kane, Son. You've got Ericsson. It's a very good side, and knowing that they might come off the back of a defeat on Tuesday, wanting to really show the world what they can do, given Pochettino's under a little bit of pressure. I can maybe see why he chose Vestergaard, but personally, I think I would go with what I think your opinion is, and would play Valerie instead. The
only thing I was thinking is if you've seen Valerie play in a back four, and it hasn't always been great. As a wing back, I always thought he was just fine. He's had a couple of instances in a flat back four where he hasn't looked super comfortable, and I thought that was going to be the reason for the change, but he puts it down to Tottenham's tactics, and maybe that's giving them too much respect given the kind of run of form they're on. But also, if you look at the team sheet, you look at some of those names and you think like those are all guys that can hurt you, and so to I guess try to compensate for that, that's fine, but I don't think it necessarily worked. I think Son had a lot of chances where he was just kind of running free at our back three, and you worry. And Bednarak did very well to frustrate him in the first half, but you worry about him switching sides and running at Vestergaard and just going, directly by him because of the pace there. And Vestergaard, I think, has gotten a lot of criticism, partially, I think, because he's been, just not had cover in some instances where he just has been exposed by having, not a natural kind of left wing back or left back next to him. And that, I think that pace gets exposed. But anyway, I mean, we go into the game, and I guess for you, what's the, I guess in the away end, what was the mood like when the lineup changed and people are starting to look and try to figure out? Because I mean, my experience being at a game, we had the team sheet kind of come out, but as you get into the ground, social media and stuff isn't as fast and doesn't work as well as you would like, just simply because all the metal that's involved in the construction of these places. But were fans generally kind of upset, or were they feeling comfortable or confident, or were they kind of arguing with one another or upset with Ralph, or what was it like?
So I think it's been a weird week and a half in terms of, if you remove the Pompey game, in terms of selection. So I think everyone was pleased to see that initial side. And then we only heard the change from kickoff. So at that point, it was just sort of going into it, I suppose, just sort of hoping for the best and going forward. We've seen 5 at the back quite a bit with Prowsey working as a wing back. And although he's got great pace, he can't run at anyone. So you lose a bit of what Cedric and Valerie have on that side. But then you say maybe it's better choice in the defensive mindset, bringing Vestergaard on instead of the Valerie change. But I think at that point, seeing the front three of Buffal, Redmonds and Ings, we were all sort of fairly buoyant in hoping we could give them a good game going forward in the pressing, and it worked out relatively well in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think up until the red card, possession was swung heavily in Tottenham's favor, but I wouldn't say that we were completely out of it or overrun or anything like that to begin with. I mean, were you just, I guess, for the first half hour, were you, obviously they were goal up, but were you super worried about how things were going, or did you feel that we were playing decently? I think we had an early chance from a set piece. Ings got in behind on a kind of just a long ball and didn't really get anything with it. But I think we were looking like we could play with them, I think, for the most part in the formation that we had chosen and how the matchup was looking. But what was your thoughts on early in the match?
I think the thing with Saints is we always play better against top 6 sides than the bottom. It always comes up, and I think, despite the fact that we went behind, we always looked like we were in the game. The problem is you always hope that we make something of the time we get on the ball. Obviously, that early Ings chance didn't come to anything, and you hope for the time we do get. Sometimes the lack of clinical finishing could be an issue, but I think at that point the game was still relatively early, and I think even once Sora had the first yellow card, at that point we know they're causing them problems, and we know that we're getting in behind them, and there's a good chance we could get something out of the game.
Yeah, and I would kind of say, like, the first 10 minutes or so, I think we were probably even or on top a little bit. As you approach the 20-minute mark, they start to build a little bit more pressure, but there was one particular run of play that I was really kind of impressed with, and I think it kind of came through the middle. It was like a one-time flick from Buffal. And I don't know if you guys were kind of watching this, but that was one of those instances where, like, if this results in a goal, or just even if it produces a world-class save from Lloris, that we get a corner from it, if we can get something out of it, some sort of momentum, that's one of those things that it was. But it was a flick from Buffal. Redmond got at the ball, who eventually got it to Højbjerg, who forced a save from Lloris, kind of down, I think, low and to his right. I don't know if that was coming towards you in the first half or going away from you, but what I guess, just do you recall that run of play from Saints?
Yeah. So it was going away from us. We were fairly far away from that move, but it's a great view from the away end. There's loads of screens, and you wouldn't miss something if you were at the wrong end of the New Tottenham ground. And yeah, that move was lovely. It's that classic bit of Buffal skill that we all know he's got in his locker, and when he gets out and it works well, we're all praising him for it. And yeah, I did think that was a great early sign that we would do something, and we would potentially get some out of this game.
Yeah. I kind of was really impressed with Buffal early on. He held off a couple of guys. He was smart, other than he chose to shoot from, I think, some distance at one point where he had a couple of passes that were maybe on. But I think one of those guys that has definitely benefited from the time away and the chance to reset himself into Ralph and come back and and he looks just a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, a little bit more willing to track back. And there were instances yesterday, even late in the game, where he, was 2-on-1 kind of isolated on the right wing and still was winning the ball back and keeping possession when we needed it and trying to get the ball in the box, create something. So I was really happy with him. But Spurs eventually kind of create a chance down the left. Son is running at Bednarak, and Bednarak's doing well to kind of hold him up and frustrate him. But I think he found Dembele kind of in the middle, just kind of free in the 6-yard area, and he can't sort his feet out, shoots it over the bar. A huge warning, I think, from us. And then almost the exact same kind of play where he that puts him ahead. And Dembele again found by Son, I think, in the box, and a little bit of a deflection off of Bednarak. Gunn maybe can do better, but at that point, then Spurs are up, and it's kind of, you spoke earlier of us having the possession and not necessarily being able to capitalize on it. And I think that's one of those instances where we start pretty strong. Spurs are no slouch, but we're in the game definitely, but we're not able to capitalize on maybe the advantage that we have. And then before you know it, we're kind of behind, and now it's a game of kind of playing, I guess, catch up, I guess. Yeah,
that exactly. I mean, the Spurs showed their quality a couple of times, and then I must admit, I think we were a little bit annoyed at the goal that we conceded. You don't mind scoring a goal that's been well worked and great players have become a part of it, but I think the strike and the potential save that Gunn should have pulled off sort of frustrated a fair few of the away fans, and given that we weren't completely out of the game at that point. I do think some questions were asked at Gunn at that point, but he has, every goalkeeper has their moment, sort of Sheffield United moment for their goalkeeper yesterday, where he, on Saturday, where he didn't make great the one goal that happened in his game, and I can't say it was anywhere near as bad as that. So, we were a bit disappointed to be behind at that point, but 24 minutes in with a good side on the pitch, still hoping for something out of the match.
Yeah, and obviously frustrating, but we're definitely not out of it, and we've played well up until that point, and you just hope for a response. And just kind of looking at how the team was set up in that point, like you get the first yellow card there just after that for Serge Aurier gets a yellow card, and I think that one was definitely deserved. The second one may be a bit soft, but I will still take it because without 10 minutes after the goal, we're man up for basically 60 minutes, and we had gone from having just over a third of possession during the time when it was 11v11 to basically flipping that and having almost 70% possession for the rest of the time. And obviously our goal came after that. It wasn't a well-worked anything. It was just Danny Ings putting pressure on somebody and Lloris making, you talk about a huge error for a goalkeeper, him making just a terrible mistake and us getting it over the line. And at that point, with the game tied and us kind of having played well against 11, given up a goal that we'd be frustrated with, but then also now having gotten the game back level, you had to think, at least for a couple of minutes, because that's all it lasted, that we were really had a decent chance to take something from the match.
Oh, for sure. That was definitely the point of view from the away end. When you've got that extra man and then we level it and it seems like a clean slate, almost like we can forget about that earlier goal and start again, you've always got to look to capitalise. I mean, there's a lot of it to be said about teams that go down a player and whether they come out and they play better sometimes without 11 players on the pitch. But from the Saints' point of view, that was a great moment. Ings as well tracking back and he did it against Liverpool with the Adrian mistake and again Lloris mistake. And that's what the press is all about, and that's why we like the Hassan Hutel style of football in it, and we look like we were back in this game playing well. And although it didn't last long, there was certainly optimism with myself and I think most of the away fans at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, we did also have maybe a fair bit of luck. The Spurs were claiming the ball was out of play for the red card, the second yellow card. They were claiming the ball was out there, but obviously it wasn't called. You got to play to the whistle, and I don't care. You can't if you're running behind the fullback, he's goal side of you, and you decide just to trip him up or pull him back, like you're asking to be booked again. And so I saw something about bookings and fouls, and that we wound up with a lot more fouls and fewer bookings than Tottenham had. And I think that goes down to some of the stuff that we've seen Saints do recently, which is where if we lose the ball high up the pitch, we're going to commit those kind of tactical fouls and make sure that they don't basically get to come down the other end and punish us when we lose the ball when we're pressing, because it gives us a chance to get back in possession. Whereas some of their fouls, I think, were more as we were going forward. It meant that we were hitting them on the counterattack, and then they were picking up the fouls because we were kind of running away from them at that point. And I think that's a totally different. If you foul people in your own area, in your own in your own offensive third, you tend not to be booked unless it's completely egregious. And whereas if guys are making moves or running by defenders, then the referee's, I think, always more likely to bring the bookings on. But were people? What were the Tottenham fans doing at this point? I know that stadium is massive and everything else, but were they? Could you sense any kind of trepidation from them, or were they kind of feeling pretty confident in their team being up 2-1, even though they were down a man?
They were not happy. It's the worst sound I've heard from a team when they went in at half time from a winning team. They did not agree with the decision. The referee was then their point of call for any noise making for the rest of the match. They almost failed to cheer their own team in wanting to have a go at the referee, which is quite disappointing for a brand new sound made for great acoustics. I must admit, when the Saints were singing at certain points, we could hear ourselves stand alone, and it sounded great. And I completely see your point with that second yellow card. If that second yellow card that happens is in the other third rather than defending, if it was, say, one of our attackers just grabbing onto someone, you see the argument of where the foul happens, maybe that's what result you get for it. And obviously referees need to be consistent. And that way you could maybe see them being aggrieved, but the first yellow card in its own was an awful challenge, and you could potentially see another day a harsh referee potentially given a worse decision, a red for that. So Aurel's got to do better where he is and not putting back the player. And although it's not a great camera angle, there was definitely contact, and I think the contact leading into goal is enough for a second yellow. And yeah, the Tottenham fans were not happy for the whole game with that referee after that one decision.
Yeah, so we picked up over the course of the match 18 fouls, and they had 5, and that resulted in one of their players being sent off. But I think it's if you look, I'm looking at the map, the plot map now, like a lot of them are in places where kind of the ball's either stationary, or they're us kind of breaking down a counterattack. There aren't very many kind of in our kind of our last defensive third. They're all kind of on that line and forward. So, and I think the situation, of course, like I think dictates a little bit of that. But I think we have to talk about some of the frustrations that result, because, as I said earlier, from the point of the red card on, we have almost 70% of the ball, and people are asking questions as to why we can't break teams down. And I could offer defense for that, and maybe I will a little bit later. But I mean, for you, watching our team go forward and kind of dominate possession, and even though we're behind, I was really hoping we were able to break them down, but there looked to be maybe just the lack of just the clinical kind of final ball. Like, we don't have Kevin De Bruyne to kind of pick passes out and things like that. But were you at all, I guess, optimistic or were you guys, because they're shooting towards you now in the second half, you have to imagine that you're just hoping for one of those chances to be tapped in or bundled in or banged in, however it goes in. But kind of what were your thoughts like throughout the second half in terms of just hoping we can actually get it over the line?
So I think when the guys came out for the start of the second half, we were optimistic, well and truly, because of that red card. You come out and you've got one extra man, you hope that you can make that count stretched. And we play, although many fans don't like it, we play side to side so much, and it creates space in places. And the fact that they had one less man, we were hoping that was gonna come good for us. And I think it was truly just as the half progressed, and we kept getting these chances, and Lloris pulled out some amazing saves, and it just felt like those chances were never going to be taken at that point. If you told someone at half time there's not going to be another goal in the game, I think you'd be very surprised. And I think with that red card, we were hoping we'd make the most of it. But yeah, as that half went on, we slowly sort of came to realise that we weren't going to get anything else in that game.
Yeah, I think, you as you said, we did play side to side quite a bit, but we had midfielders kind of making runs. We had shifted the formation a little bit at halftime, and I thought we had plenty of players making movements. We just couldn't find the final touch, and we had the great save from Lloris from the Ward-Prowse free kick, from that Maya Yoshida header. Both times that you think, I think Yoshida gets up there and thinks this is going in, and it just, Lloris made a brilliant save. And I think maybe a little bit of credit to him for making that kind of costly error at the beginning and then kind of bailing himself out, or at least putting it out of his mind. But he's no stranger to making a massive mistake in a big game and then having to actually play after that. So, he's managed to do that. But, I was really impressed, especially early on in the second half, where Spurs just could not get it clear. They had everybody back, and we were just piling on pressure. And I think that's where the intensity that Hasenhüttl, I think that was one of the biggest changes, is we were winning the ball back. We were fighting to get the ball back and not allow them to clear, not allow them to be out. And you had Vestergaard at one point kind of stepping forward and kind of drawing a foul. You had guys kind of moving into areas, and it was definitely disappointing not to be able to just to have that player, or to have that vision to find space between the lines. But I think also Tottenham did a really good job of staying compact, and you would have thought they would end at halftime and definitely tightened up whatever kind of defensive shape they were going to have. And that, I think that's what happens, is those guys, they have to be resolute if they're going to make the Champions League places, obviously. So they're not going to just sit there and allow us to pick them apart. They're not going to be pulled out like maybe a newly promoted team or a lower league team in a cup competition. They just weren't going to fall for that stuff. So I think they did pretty well to do that. But I think it's safe to say we were somewhat disappointed with the lack of I guess cutting edge that we had.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. The possession and all the stats show. Quite often, the Saints fan, you come away from the game looking at the stats, apart from the one that counts, saying we had such a good game. We played such a great style of football. The intensity was great. Getting forward, having that extra man did help us. But yeah, it's just that clinical extra edge in that final third, that one pass. A couple of times there were a couple of crosses that went in, and I think Danny very nearly got on the end of one of them. It came very close. Obviously, the Prowse free kick that I think it was against Tottenham last year that he scored one at St Mary's after it was the Man U away and Tottenham at home where he scored it. So hoping that would come about again. 14 shots and 6 on target. A goalkeeper does well to keep 6 shots on target out in any game. So plaudits do have to go to Lloris, especially as you said, coming back from that earlier mistake to do as well as he did. Those 2 saves, and the ones from Prowse and Yoshida really stick out. And I thought once those 2 don't go in, you get as far as, what will go in, That became the feeling in the second half. A feeling that nothing was quite going to go right, despite the amount of ball we had, despite the amount of chances we had. They held strong, and I do feel though we do come away disappointed that we didn't get anything out of that game. I think a point would have been just deserved.
Sure. I don't know. I'm kind of just in my head thinking about some of the goals we scored this season, and some of them have been really nice. You think of Djenepo. You think of even some of the goals during the match on Tuesday. But then you also think there could easily be the alternative goals of the season where it's just us bundling them in from closing down the goalkeeper. Danny Ings on there 3 or 4 times for just barely getting it over the line. And you start to think about the fact that you think about the second goal that Tottenham scored, where they carved us open, and it was kind of 1-2 touch stuff. And that was beautiful to watch. It just sucks that it happened against us. But you start thinking about the moves that we had that gave us those opportunities, but our inability to finish those chances. And you start to worry a little bit, I think, about, is this still a theme that we've had over the kind of the last couple of seasons, where we don't have the ability to finish those chances or really create those really clear cut opportunities where all of a sudden you have just a back post tap in because you've done all the work on the front side. And I don't know if it's just because we just don't have the players, or they're not skilled enough, or they haven't been taught, or the system doesn't work. But it's hard for me to really be critical of that, because I don't know. I'm not a top level coach. I don't know how to say what guys should be doing, where they should be going. You look at the space between the Tottenham back line for the most part yesterday. and it was just non-existent. The lines were compact and they were moving in unison. And you think of Jan Vertonghen, you think of Toby Alderweireld, and you think of some of these guys they have on the pitch, that those guys are top level performers. They're international center backs. They are a partnership both internationally and at club level. And on their day, I think it's tough to find a better partnership there, you know?
Yeah, I think that comparison between the goals we scored so far this season and where we haven't is quite interesting in terms of the goal we scored yesterday, closing down the keeper. We did that against Liverpool as well. The goals midweek, and most of them were sort of big breaky goals, apart from maybe Ings' first one. I mean, I'm thinking of Redmond's last goal, to be honest. The big break forwards, but getting the ball, moving it forward quickly, which is how Tottenham's second goal went. I think we're good at the goals where we don't have possession. Having possession around the defence, especially like Tottenham, as you say, that's so well experienced. I mean, they go off every couple of months and play for all of their countries regularly, and they start trying to break a team down when we've got lots of possession. I think we just we struggle to do. We can't quite do it. Whereas breaking forward and pressing well and quick breaks, I think we're much more clinical. I think because they had that man down, they went defensive, they held strong, they didn't leave any space for us. They all came back. Even Kane was getting back and defending, and there's a team with possession who's trying to get through teams that are happy to do that. I think that's why we struggle, and normally play better against the top six because they come at us. But I think because they had the red card, they didn't come at us as much as they could have in the second half. And I can only really think of the Harry Kane chance where he sort of sliced it straight across the goal mouth, and I think the Tottenham fans thought it would gone in, but they didn't really get forward much in that second half, and the stats show it. And I just think we do struggle to break down teams if we've mainly got possession in the game and they're happy to sit back.
I mean, I think any team in the Premier League would be frustrated with not being able to score against 10 men in the second half like that when we had that much possession. But I also think that almost every manager would come out, and maybe it's just saving face, and say, like, you know, it's tough to break teams down. And so I've seen, you know, I've had, you know, been in fantasy football situations where all of a sudden your players are up against 10 men and you think, oh, this is it, you know, and then nothing happens. They don't score. It happens. I would assume, you know, more often than we would like, but there's no way not to be frustrated with it, I think. And I think that's totally fair for us to be kind of questioning, but also I'm not sure we should be, you know, so paranoid or worried about it that people either ironically or not start to suggest that Ralph needs to pack his bags, because there was some of that stuff over the, you know, I think somebody said if we lose the midweek match, you know, pack your bags, Ralph. And it's like, well, if we would have put out like 5 center backs and, you know, Jack Stevens at defensive midfield or something like that, like, yeah, and we lose, like, yeah, get out because that's terrible. But like, really, in reality, I don't think it's that bad. But I don't know. Any kind of final thoughts? I mean, now 7 games in. It's not the end of the world. I think 10 games is probably a little bit better of a measuring stick, but 7 points through 7 games. Are you worried? Are you comfortable with the development you see in some of the individuals maybe, or are you starting to question maybe Ralph's tactics a little bit?
I mean, the intensity and the way he's getting us to play, I think is a Southampton fan's dream. Sort of the pressing, the big attacking. You've got the fast players on the wing. You've got players like Redmond and Djenepo and Boufal. The way we're playing, I think, is great, and I think not a lot of Saints fans can complain about that. I must admit, the one thing I've been surprised at this season, given how well he did last season, is Hassan Hüttl's decision-making. I think, so yesterday we were in the stadium calling for him to make changes, and he brought 3 subs on. He brings on Armstrong for Vestergaard, not until the 79th minute, which I think at that point is too late. The first Pochettino sub was in the 64th minute. And then Obafemi and Long come on, who've got great amount of pace. I mean, they're great attacking players. But they come on in the 83rd and 88th minute. And I think this season we're all a little bit dumbfounded in some of the decisions that Hassan Hüttl has made, which is not me calling for his head to go whatsoever. I think he's the best thing that's happened to our club in a very long number of years. I mean, I was at Newcastle away under Pellegrino. It's the first time I've gone to Newcastle, 5-hour journey. We were 3-0 down. 30 minutes gone. So I would never be one to call for a manager to go after this form of results, and 7 points in 7 games isn't a bad feat in the Premier League. But I must admit, I do stop myself and question Hassan Hüttl's some of the starting lineups with the whole Bertrand incident and his substitutions, especially yesterday, because I think if Long and Obafemi had come on earlier, we would have had a better chance at breaking them down with a little bit more pace and just that fresh freshness that those, eager attacking players want to give, and they show you. I mean, Obafemi showed it against Pompey, and I'm a big advocate for him, one of the stars out of the academy. And yeah, I'm not worried, but I'm hoping that we see a couple of better tactical decisions going forward.
Yeah, I think the problem that we had yesterday was, if you look at the bench, and I think we were talking about it in the Discord channel before, you can kind of see who's coming on depending on the situation. And obviously he's not bringing on Danzo or Valerie. And if Lewis comes on, then, everybody can be in an uproar, because there's no reason to bring the goalkeeper on at that point. But those were not. Armstrong is probably the most creative of the three that are there. And to have Long and Obafemi on going into the game, you would think, you're probably going to be under pressure. To have a little bit of an outlet, to have some pace there, to run at Vertonghen and Alderweireld maybe as they're tiring late in the game. That's great, but we didn't have the players on the bench to come in and kind of unlock. There was nobody out there to say, stand in the middle or spin a defender or whatever and have a shot. Those players weren't there, and so I think I think we actually lost creativity with some of those substitutions given. Not the Armstrong for Vestergaard, but some of the other substitutions. I think you lose some creativity and you gain some raw pace, but I think you maybe lack the maturity to finish chances because Long is just not, generally he's not on target all that often, even though he does a lot of things. And Obafemi, I think, is kind of in between there. He's got a lot of pace, but I wouldn't consider him a natural goal scorer yet either. So I think, given what he had on the bench, that it was going to be that, but I'm not sure that the substitutions actually, helped us at all in that sense.
Yeah, I think the way the game played out in the end was Tottenham trying to keep the result the way it was going. I don't think they got a chance to shine personally. I do agree that the starting lineup was good, and the substitutions that are made do completely change the way we play. Booth Alpha-Long isn't a straight swap. Obafemi Frings isn't a straight swap, and we were playing good football. So yeah, it completely changes the creativity and the abilities on the pitch. But yeah, I just felt that if you're chasing a game and you've got attacking players on the bench and someone that's as young and as fresh as Obafemi who wants to make a difference, and given Ings' sort of injury status, potentially bringing them on earlier or just moving the squad around a bit where you bring subs on earlier to make a difference, it could have been something that could have changed yesterday.
Yeah, and I know there was some people were wondering why Adams wasn't there, but I mean, if you give the guy a rest after playing almost every minute of every game, or starting every game so far, I think taking him out of the firing line a little bit and just saying, hey man, just relax and, regroup, and we'll see you, at practice or at training, that's fine. Although you then look at, could we have brought him on late and could that have made a difference? But, it's a lot. You can what if, I think, to death and second guess, and that's, I guess it's what we're doing, but at the same time, I'm not, everybody makes mistakes. Hasenhüttl's not perfect. I think the honeymoon period is over, but still pretty happy with him as a manager. I can't be upset with the general overall kind of, I guess how the club is, the direction the club is going. I think it's fine, but I think we should move on. Unless you want to add something there.
Oh, I did. I completely agree in terms of, we were playing great football and it was a great game to watch, even from a Saints point of view, not coming away with the result. So, to keep this style of football going forward would be very good.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely disappointed yesterday at the end of the game, but sometimes Saints play early in the morning here, and I spend the rest of my day just in a terrible mood, and everybody knows. And even my wife yesterday kind of goes like, "Did you guys lose?" I said, yes, we did. She goes, "Oh, okay." And like, my mood was not giving that off, I guess, and it was a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, like, I enjoyed watching the match. The match was entertaining, and it was kind of just, we just lacked a little bit, and I guess that's just fine. But I say we move on towards the question portion of the show, and you are a patron, and one of the things that patrons get is a priority for having their questions answered each and every week. In addition to that, people send them in on the private Discord chat that we have, and then some patrons get the extra podcast episode per month. Although this week, everybody got one extra, some people got two extra, and I think that is part of the reason I am somewhat tired, because it's been a busy week and I hadn't even really realized it. But here we are. So we'll start with Rob, who kind of jokingly asked if everyone other than our fullbacks were injured. So we only have fullbacks available. Who would Ralph stretcher out to play at left back, given that we refuse seemingly to line up with an actual with actual fullbacks? It seems to be a thing that we are avoiding. And Kevin McGee asks a similar question. He says that with Soares gets injured pre-match, or is it unavailable as it turns out pre-match? Why wouldn't Valerie take his place? We've kind of talked about that, but I mean, do you care to offer an answer for Rob? Is who would you, if everybody's injured except for the fullbacks, who would you bring on to play at left back and just kind of set him out there in a wheelchair on a stretcher?
So I think, I want to use the squad, and there's players that play on Tuesday night that haven't had a chance in a while. So one of those players, Alex McCarthy, I think.
Who actually is injured, and that would work. You stretch him out there. It would be, as long as he doesn't have any Hugo Lloris moments, it would be fine. I think I would beforehand jokingly say, maybe Boufal or Djenepo. But Djenepo, we saw what he did, and I fully expected Boufal to come in and replace him at left wing back soon, but that obviously hasn't happened. But we talked a little bit about Valerie's kind of absence from the starting lineup and doesn't get in the game yesterday, even when Cedric kind of pulls out last minute. And you have to kind of wonder now, with Cedric doing that at right back, like what does that do to Ralph's confidence in him? Because Cedric was playing so well, this season. I think he was great on Tuesday. I think he's been great. Or at least really decent over the past couple of weeks. And another guy who's earned his kind of spot back in the team after kind of being on the outside for a while. But I mean, now with this, you wonder if Valerie will get another chance, or you wonder what's going on with Valerie. I know Valerie is hanging out with Mario Lamina over the summer a little bit. There were some Instagram stories where they were in the same place, so who knows if that's tainted him a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, do you have anything else to kind of add to the Valerie maybe coming in instead of Cedric, or do you think we've kind of covered that a little bit?
I mean, I think we were all a little bit surprised to see how much Cedric was playing this season after what happened last season. Valerie came in kind of out of nowhere when he did, and played and had an amazing last season. The memories of like Manchester United away obviously is the big one for him and for most people, and for all intents and purposes was doing a good job. And Cedric's come in and he's been doing an equally as good job, and it's great to have that competition for place. I think every team you really want to have two people for each position if you can, because then you've got a battle for who's going to start, and having a selection dilemma in terms of great players is always better than having a selection who's going to score us goals. So I think if there is a problem with Cedric and he's not going to play, I mean, Valerie's got to come in and give it a go, even if he's a little bit weak defensively. I think he proves that he's young and he needs a chance, and I think Hasenhüttl loves young players that he can mould and grow. And I think we can all see Valerie staying with us for a good couple of years, becoming a great player, then going to Liverpool. So I honestly think that he'll get back in the side at some point soon, whether it comes in a cup game, we've got the City twice in 4 days, or a league game where Cedric says again, sorry, I can't play because he's got something else on. I don't know what none of us know what happened there. I hope that Valerie gets back in at some point.
No, I mean, at time of recording, there has been no information, I don't think, released, as that I can find. There was an article in the Southern Daily Echo that just where Hasenhüttl says, I don't know why he couldn't play. He just came to me. It was, it wasn't even during training. It was kind of as they were getting off the bus that I'm out, and that is, I mean, beyond disappointing if you're a manager who's prepared a certain way. But maybe he's sick, maybe he's ill, maybe he's hurt, maybe he. And maybe that was the best thing for the team is then instead of him going out there and being, and maybe it's been some sort of other issue. I mean, we don't know. So I don't want to judge him too harshly, but you have to think if there proves to be no reason, you would assume that this would be one of those things that Hasenhüttl would look at and say, that's not acceptable because that does hurt the team, in one way or another. So, let's see. Got that. We jump to Instagram here. Aiden Osman 96 says, do you think that Ralph has lost confidence in some players given some of his choices? And you would think of some of the players, I guess, that a lot of the questions revolve around selection and things like that. But I mean, you look at some of the players that are out, like Valerie, and you think the confidence maybe there is gone. But I think if you look at the rest of the team, I don't see necessarily the Adams exclusion yesterday as being a loss of confidence. You look at guys like Jack Stevens, who didn't make it in the squad. but he's been on the outs since day one. Not putting Danzo in yesterday, I think was okay, given the kind of the match that he had. Not his most recent match was not great. Obviously being played out of position, having played now everywhere across the back line. But I mean, are you worried about Ralph trusting the squad at this point, or do you think that it's just kind of part of the growing pains and trying to find the best way to meld kind of Ralph's pressing and the formation he would ideally like to play and the players we have and how well they fit into that system?
I can understand why questions are being asked about Ralph at this point in terms of selection, because you look at our jokes earlier about left back and you wonder why Bertrand isn't being played, and everyone would love to be a fly on the wall in Staplewood and to see and hear what's going on, because there are a couple of weird relationships going around at the start of this season. Obviously, Bertrand not playing a certain number of matches, Valerie not getting back in the side where he was so formidable last season. But I don't think the rest of the squad's got many questions over. I think if you look at the starting 11 yesterday and you look at Ings, Redmond and Boothal, any player you potentially look at putting in there with Janepo, but obviously he's out, so that I think most people will be happy with that. And then the centre of the park, Prowse, Højbjerg and Romeo, I think everyone sees as a dream partnership, and I don't think Armstrong can get in on over those people. I think he's not quite got enough to get in past those. So yeah, I can see some questions being raised about Valerie and Bertrand, but as far as the rest of the squad, I think he's doing a good job.
We do have a question about Vestergaard potentially being dropped for Danzo. I mean, would you consider that left center back spot? Would you be willing to see Vestergaard kind of be moved out? And it kind of goes another with Rob from Twitter at RJCSFC. Says, how would you set up the defense considering the manager doesn't seem to know? I mean, would you consider that swap being something you would look for, or is Vestergaard kind of just taking the brunt of the criticism for reasons that are out of his control?
I think the defence is the biggest question on the pitch right now, and the fact that Rob said that Hassan Hootel doesn't know how to answer the question doesn't mean I don't think I'll give a better answer. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see a player coming in under a manager's guidance, and Danso is a player that Hassan Hootel obviously wanted, got ties with him and wants to bring him in. He's been given the other centre-backs and obviously sees Bednarak as his best other centre-back, which I think everyone else would agree with. But I'm not sure. I mean, if you play four at the back, Bednarak and Danso, I don't know if they look strong enough at the moment together, but potentially bringing them in together, and if we get Danso permanently, moving forward as a partnership that could grow, could be something. But I mean, Vestergaard's height is half the reason I think he's in the side sometimes, and he can be good on his day, but then we see the mistakes like the one at Burnley the first day of the season. So I can't say I have a definite answer, but I think if Danso and Bednarak had some time together and we saw that as a two they could be okay together, we could see a partnership going forward with them. But I mean, I think only time will tell, to be honest, of what we see in the starting lineup going forward. Yeah,
and if it came to the point where it was Bednarak, Yoshida, and Danzo in a back three, I mean, I'd be okay with it. I'd be Vestergaard. Obviously, the pace is the issue, and I would have always expected him to play at the center of defense in terms of a back three, but he's been a constant on that left, and I haven't been too disappointed with him. I think last season when we had wing backs, Valerie working down the right, he was able to hit that kind of long diagonal that would switch play and cause allow us to get forward kind of quickly and cause some teams problems. But that hasn't happened a whole lot this season. But I mean, he's a competent footballer. Just the pace on the counterattack and down the channel, I think teams will attack that, especially if we wind up with a guy like Janepo or somebody else at left wing back or left back. That will be the area they target because we are susceptible there. So maybe Danzo helps out a little bit, but also Danzo has been picking up cards pretty quickly. I mean, we have people in the yellow card count that are going to likely beat Romeo this year, which will be difficult considering they won't be on the pitch nearly as often. But anyway, let's go one more. We have one about creative players and keep us from finding the final killer ball. And I think we kind of talked about it. So thanks to Christian Candler for sending that in. But Kevin McGee, another one of the patrons, says, are we likely to see anyone new coming out of the academy? And if so, where and who? We had a lot of players kind of emerge, I guess, last season. And I think we all kind of said, oh my goodness, look at this. And looking back on it, it's it was maybe a message from Ralph that like, look guys, like you're not set in this lineup. If you have to fight with these academy kids to get in here, and I will take the best players that are available. And maybe he's concluded that the players he has in the Premier League squad are actually the best players that he has. But for you, looking at the academy, anybody you think could come in and potentially raise some eyebrows and maybe make a statement this season, and if not, I guess that's all right too.
So I think there's a little hierarchy in terms of who's going to play for us this season. I think there's a set number of players who are already involved in the first team squad that have come up in through the academy that want their chances, and they're probably ahead of any players that are currently in the under 23s or the under 18 squad. So I mean, you look at Obafemi playing against Pompey. I mean, he played a couple of times starting matches last season. I went to the Huddersfield game and it was a big standout for him. And I'd love to see more of him. But when you've got Ings and you've got Adams and you've got Long and then you've got Obafemi who isn't as proven, it's going to be tough to see when or if they're going to come in. Maybe he'll play Obafemi in the cup games, but if we go out against City, we'll have less cup games to play and only league games. And I think, although he wants to use the young players, someone like Djenepo is going to get in ahead of someone like Sims, who I thought had a great end to the season. I think he started a couple of games and got an assist before he went off injured in one home game. And I thought he may be given a chance this season, but obviously he's gone out on loan, comes back in January, I think. And even when he comes back, trying to get in front of Djenepo and Buffon, I think it's going to be tough. So, yeah, I'd love to see Sims. I'd love to see Obafemi. Vokins has played. Slattery, Ramsey. I mean, there are names there, but currently, I don't think, unless we have a big cup spell, they're going to get a great chance. I think Obafemi is probably the best shot we've got of a young player getting onto the pitch.
Yeah, and you would imagine he would play in that match against City in the Carabao Cup, and you kind of think about what he would have to do to get his way into the first team in terms of a starting spot, and you look at our attacking options. I think this is the best kind of attacking lineup we've had in several seasons, both with a manager that's willing to utilize them and just the players that can go and do it. And Redmond has been enjoyable to watch over the past couple of seasons, and he seems to be, I would say, slightly angrier this season. I think last year he was just kind of keeping to himself and enjoying things. This year he is demanding a lot of his teammates, and I think I think it's good. I think we need people to step up and do things, and he is a willing runner, and he kind of has the pace, maybe more of the strength than he's had in previous seasons, but also kind of the ball skills to get himself free and try to create things. The shooting isn't quite there. We saw some shots go over the bar yesterday. I think Buffal has all the trickery in the world, and also some strength and some kind of maybe a little bit more of the idea that he's got to put in the work defensively. And I think he's been great there this year. But yeah, like you said, I think the attacking options are going to be tough for people to get in. I think it'll probably be a left back or a right back that'll come in and do it, because that seems to be where Ralph will play anybody. So I fully expect to see Slattery at left wing back, I guess, soon. Luke, this has been a fantastic kind of chat, and we've what people will hear will probably be obviously less than what we've been talking about right now. But I mean, this has been an enjoyable kind of period of time for me just to get to know you a little bit. It's a pleasure to do this. I'm sorry to take up so much of your time on a Sunday afternoon, but I really do appreciate it. Oh no, thank you. It's a great pleasure. Someone's needed time to reflect and talk about Saints and what you spent a whole day doing in London yesterday. But it's good to talk to other people and how Saints affects them and connect with lots of different people around the world. So yeah, thank you very much. I know, my pleasure. And I don't know. Hopefully we fleshed out some ideas. I'm not sure if we kind of are able to nail anything down, because it's difficult to pin down kind of exactly what needs to happen when you're trying to break teams down, when you're frustrated, but also you kind of feel like you played a good game, a good match, and you had things that went your way in terms of maybe getting a man up, but then it just didn't quite work out in the end. But I mean, it can be difficult to kind of do all those things. So it's not, I don't know. Hopefully we flesh some things out, and hopefully we, people enjoy it, and hopefully we get to do this again. Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to come back and talk to you some more. All right, man. We will talk to you next time. That does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to my guest, Luke Millard. He's on Instagram at Millard505. Luke, thank you so much for coming on the show, for talking with me, for giving me so much of your time, and just allowing me to get to know you a little bit better. Also, now that you've seen how the sausage is made, hopefully you still enjoy the show. If you don't, that's my fault. And so I apologize if that's the case. But anyway, look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thank you again. The show would be impossible without a couple of partners of the show. Matt Beling, who you heard from last week, does the logo for the show. Sometimes he can be found on Instagram at WeAreSouthampton. Those are the good edits, not the ones that I put out. Those are not good. Also, our partner page is the Southampton page. You can find them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You should go to them for all your Southampton FC news and needs to keep you up to date with everything going on at the club. If you're interested in getting in touch with this show on social media, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We are at Facebook.com/SFC Delivery. You can get links to all of those, plus the links to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts at SouthamptonDelivery.com. There you can also sign up for the newsletter, which comes out each and every Friday. And I would really appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on iTunes. That really helps other people learn about the show. It helps it get into the faces of new people who may be looking for a football podcast about Southampton, because whether you know it or not, Saints fans actually live all over the world. Once again, Luke is a patron of the show, and as a result, he gets access to a private Discord channel, priority for having his questions answered on the show each and every week. And he also gets an extra podcast episode per month. So if you are interested in that, you can go to patreon.com/SFC Delivery. I would love to see you in there, and I appreciate your support. But really, I appreciate your support in just listening and sharing the show. So that means the world to me. Don't feel any pressure to go to Patreon. If you're enjoying it and you want to, that is there as an option because people like you have asked. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits, that's probably over by now, is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. And that does it for this week's episode. I thank you so much once again for listening. We will be back next week after Chelsea. But until then, remember that together, we march on.